Welcome back. So last time you saw me putting these rubber boots on the positive terminals for the isolator, and I picked up a smaller one here, this little white one from the guys at S&S, so I could put that one on the actual power that triggers that isolator. So I got that one put on, and so pretty much everything now that's a live power connector has a rubber boot on it. And they also had some metal locking nuts there, the AN6s for the wing bolts, the leading edge ones in the strake. So picked up a couple of those and swapped out the regular nylocks that were in there. And as you can see, I'm just sort of putting this one on here. I've already taken the other one off. And I was able to torque those ones up as well. And somebody had asked on one of the comments in that, how do you know what torque value to set it for? And you just Google it. So you just Google AN bolt torque values or something like that, and you'll come up with some values generally in inch pounds. So you just convert it to foot pounds for the torque wrench that I'm using there. So it was around about 100 is good for the AN 10 bolts, and I think it's 22.9 or something works out to be pretty good for the AN 6 bolts. So here you can see I'm torquing it. And after I did this one, there you can see it in there. It's all torqued up. I went to do the one on the other side, and I wasn't very happy. It was very difficult to get to the other one on the other side for any given reason to torque it up. So I ended up basically pulling those bolts out and switching them around, and here I'm basically back on the same side again, the first side, and I've swapped the bolt around so the nut is on the inboard side. And there I'm easily or more easily able to get the torque wrench on there and make sure that I'm doing a good job of torquing it. And I double checked it several times just to see that I was getting it right. And you probably can't see that on there, but anyway, that was about 23 foot-pounds. So wings are all torqued on now. And I also picked up a couple more 8L clamps from Home Depot here, and use them here to secure the heater hose lines there to the engine mount frame, so they're not going to sort of move around anymore. Just before I just had those just with some cable ties just holding them in place, but with the intention of always getting some more 8L clamps. I was just looking for the right size ones, and these nice flexible ones. And so the next thing is the switches there to indicate when the gear is up and locked. And these are some more of these little micro switches that I had, so I need to create these little brackets. And so as you can see there, I just bent up some aluminum for those, and there I'm just bending one up there, and I just drilled them and tapped them for the 256 size little Allen bolts that I bought, and there you can see I've got them in there now on one of them. And then what I did after I did that, I took the switch off again. And on the other side there that's going to be mounted, I just drilled some larger holes. So when I put the little epoxy on there you can see 3 larger holes. When I put the epoxy on there to bond it on, it has a good area to grip through, because it wouldn't grip very well just to the aluminum. So those 3 are ready to go, and here I'm mounting the actual switches for the final time onto those brackets. And just using a little bit of Loctite on those little Allen bolts, just so they won't come out. So yeah, and the next thing to do was to solder up the wires for the one in the nose, because I didn't have a line on the aircraft yet for that. I had it wired up to the bulkhead pass-through there in the nose compartment. And so all the wiring internal is already there up to the switches and the little LED indicator lights for the gear, but there wasn't a wire running yet to where this switch is going to live in the nose. Now the ones for the main gear already had those wires sitting there ready to go. All I had to do was connect them up. So here you can see I've gone and made a wire for this, and gone and soldered that on, and just put a little bit of heat shrink on the wires there just to make it look clean and nice. So and then on the other end of that, just a ground wire there, and then the other little pin there that goes through the bulkhead pass through one of the 28 pin connectors into the cabin. So, and there's a switch on the other end. So I just got to mount that now, and then run the wire there and put it through the connector. And here's one of the ones for the main gear. So I pulled that wire out because it was just sitting there, sort of rolled up inside the gear compartment there. Stripped it off and soldered the two wires on there for that one. So that one just needs to be mounted there now with some of that epoxy that I'm using that you'll see in a little bit. So, and what's going to happen is when the door shuts, the door will actually touch against that little roller on the switch there and close the circuit, and that'll have the indication that the gear is up and locked. And it really won't be able to go off until the door is fully locked or fully closed. And I can always bend that arm a little bit if it needs a slight amount of adjustment. And now we're on to Friday, and here's my little epoxy tube that I use. So it's one of these 2-part ones with a little squirt nozzle there, and just these throwaway nozzles that when you squirt it in there, the 2 parts mix together as they go down the nozzle there, and it goes off pretty quick, this stuff. So I got these little tabs here that I'm going to use for a whole bunch of little mounts there with cable ties to keep some, or tie down some of the cables and stuff that I have in various parts that you'll see here in a minute. And these things are really handy because it doesn't take any time at all to bond them in place, and then cable tie just slides through there and around whatever you want to hold in place. So I've got a whole bag of those. I do actually prep the surface here. You can see in there I've got one bonded in, but before I bond it in, I just prep the surface there with a little bit of sanding, and then just wipe it off with some alcohol, and then it's ready to have something bonded on. You don't want like a shiny surface or anything like that. So that one was for the cables in the rudder, and then that one there is going to be a loop that is going to go around that turnbuckle there, so if it goes slack at all, it doesn't catch on anything. And then in here I've got a whole bunch of them just to catch all this different wiring that I've got going on in here, and I've just sort of placed them where I need to have the wiring held in place on those walls. So everywhere there's a little bit of yellow tape, there's one of those bonded in. And then on the nose there you can see I've got the switch there for the nose gear door, and that's been bonded on. And again, some of those little ties there on the wall there where the wiring's going to go in there, you can see how the epoxy comes through those 3 holes that were drilled in that little mounting bracket. And then you can see the little yellow tape there where I've got those other ones that are going to hold that wire once I put a little bit of wire loom on there. And this is one of the ones in the main gear here. See, that one's bonded into place now, and actually just used like a little clamp on there when I did it, because it sets up pretty fast, but you don't want to be sitting around holding it because you've got the nozzle going, and while that nozzle is sort of active, it's wanting to cure. So you pretty much got to go around and get everything done as quickly as you can, and then the nozzle ends up being a throwaway, and then everything else that's still in the tube is reusable. So here's the one on the other side, and it's all bonded in now. And as I said, I'll be able to bend those arms a little bit if I need to make an adjustment, but that one will hit around about there on the door when that door closes, and just close that circuit, and then it'll light up on the dash there that the gear is up and locked. So probably not necessary to have the up gear stuff, but while I'm waiting for these other things to go, these things are on my to-do list. So there's a loop there, the cable tie. It's not touching that turnbuckle right now, so won't catch on it. But if that turnbuckle ever goes loose for any given reason, like when you're pushing on one rudder and not the other, then that'll catch it. And there you can see I've cable tied those cables as well, so they're not going to move around there. And as I said, that turnbuckle shouldn't go loose, but when you push on one rudder, the other rudder can go loose. It shouldn't sort of work its way slack up to there, but just in case it does, it won't catch on anything there. You can see I've cable tied that with a little loop in there, keep it away from that bell crank, and did the one on the other side as well. And here's the one in the nose now that I got the wire loom on there, and got that all neat and tidy and all held in place so it's not going to move around. So things have come along. Pretty much all the wiring and stuff I think is nearly all done now. Everything that I wanted to have done. And then you can see I've tidied that one up as well, and cable tied that to some of the other runs there coming out of the wing, out of the strake. So that's all ready to go. Eventually I'll have to put the aircraft back on the barrels and retest the gear and make sure that all the indicators are working. And there you can see that one all in place now. Cable ties holding everything there, so pretty much everything in the baggage compartment now is all tidied up as much as I want to do it. I think there's not really much else that I can do there. Maybe put a bit more loom on those bits of wires over there, but probably not necessary. Yeah, and lastly I changed out this pressure switch because the one I had was too high, and this is the one that is going to trigger closed circuit when you get to about 85 knots. It's going to allow the gear to come up as a pitot comes in through that tube there, and will trigger that switch. So I've calibrated that now to about 85 knots, and I'm still waiting on the stuff to come back from the guys across the way in the machine shop. Doesn't sound like that's going to be until the end of next week at the earliest, so I may not be basically putting that new coupling on until after Oshkosh. So that's unfortunate. So really may not be too much going on now between now and after Oshkosh. Anyway, that's the update for this week. Thanks again for watching, and we'll tune in again on Tuesday and we'll see what I have for you.